Seems like the rainy season might be back again. But that's okay. You can come sit by the fire and listen to great stories any old time. Welcome to Cozy Horror with me, Dr. Plague. Let's get some stories for you on this cold, rainy day. Let's get things started with a little tale by R.J. Schuyler. If you're in the mood for games, let's hope you don't participate in what could arguably be the strangest game of peekaboo. My eyes slowly opened. The soft, slightly sticky warmth of my modest one-bedroom apartment hung like an oppressive reminder that I, as an unemployed and nearly penniless tenant, couldn't afford to turn on my air conditioning. I'd fallen asleep in a slump against the old brown leather couch in the living room. Again. I groaned as my body shifted into place, stretching my legs and arms about, feeling them wake up as I did. July in Georgia is not forgiving, and it certainly took no prisoners. The hours I had whittled away, I spent largely just laying around, hoping my email notification would go off regarding a potential job. This cycle had been ongoing for about a week or two, and honestly made time seem even more warped. My mind berated me. Was I doing enough? Should I be burning through my very nearly non-existent savings like this? I shouldn't be picky. I should just go get whatever job I can. Beggars can't be choosers, you know. Attempting to shake off the mental fog, I got up quickly from the couch, walked over to the mini-fridge against the adjacent wall, and took out an ice-cold soda. Placing the cold can against my head, I sighed, having momentary relief and trying to reassure myself that I was making the right decision. I deserve the right job. I have the experience. I have the skill set. I shouldn't just settle. One of these opportunities will pan out. I just know it. Feeling a renewed sense of vigor, I turned to my phone, charging on the tablet that sat beside the couch. I nabbed it up and looked at the screen to see the time, 4:37 p.m., and nothing else but my screensaver, some generic mountain range captured at dusk that always made me feel nostalgic for a place I'd never been. I let out another sigh and glanced around the space, the warm living quarters, and thought about how to kill the rest of my day. That's when I heard it, outside my apartment window. A lady's voice, fairly young, exuberant, happy, slightly wrong. "I see you, peekaboo, I see you," she said. Sounded like she was talking to a kid, maybe even a baby. I was half tempted to pull back the curtains and scan the lawn to see, but I thought if she was there and some weird dude started staring at her, well, that'd be awkward. I'm not overly familiar with my neighbors in the apartment across the way, but I'd never seen a kid or a baby, and I'd never heard a voice like that before. To a normal person, you'd think, why is a lady talking to a baby weird? And you know, I'd agree with you, but I'd spent too much time indoors with nothing but my own mind to keep me company. And I'm sure you can guess that leads to heightened anxiety. Christopher, get a hold of yourself, dude. Spent too many days sitting in this apartment, moping around. Now, some lady's talking to a baby, and it's got you freaked out. I let out a chuckle at myself for being stupid. What a dumbass. I cracked the soda open and took a gulp, letting the carbonation and sugar simultaneously burn and soothe my throat. I let out a hearty "ah" afterwards, and it seemed to amuse me. I finished the soda and another 2 gulps, walked over to the trash can situated near the sink, and chucked it in. Walking back into the living room, I noticed there was no longer any game of peekaboo being cooed outside my window, and all had returned to normal and uninteresting silence. With that, I turned my attention back to my phone, deciding I would manually check my emails. Sometimes the notifications didn't always work as intended, and I was desperate for some sign of forward momentum. As I placed my finger over the email icon on my home screen, the exuberant, joyful, and even a little warped voice rang out again. "I see you! Peekaboo, I see you!" This time it wasn't coming from behind me, beyond the curtained window. It was coming from my porch, right behind my front door. I stared in confusion in that direction. What in the hell? I could feel anxiety, anxious energy surging through my body. My mind wasn't sure how to process the voice or what was happening. Why is the voice at my door? Why does it sound like that? Tried to quickly rationalize it. Maybe she was waiting for a friend across the way. The Carolwoods, I think. Maybe she's friends or family or something. It's hot, and she's got her baby and is trying to keep him calm or entertained. My brain was rooting around, trying to red yarn its way to some conclusion that made the voice that was now just past my front door less out of place, less strange. "Get it together," I said. Then it hit me. I was dramatizing a situation because I was bored and not very productive. Of course, duh. I chuckled again at my own stupidity. I'm going to go to my room and watch TV. The fan blows better in there anyway, and I'll be away from the ladies' annoying blabbering. I'm not scared. I'm just annoyed, that's all. I lied to make myself feel less like a wuss who was evading a strange scenario and more like someone who was choosing to avoid an obnoxious situation. I sat up and quickly walked down the hall, the ladies disorderly, joyful, and robotic "I see you" fading away. Upon entering my modest room, which housed a bed, a sofa chair, a small closet, and a smaller bathroom, I shut the door and, out of some animal-born sense of security, I locked it. I plopped down in the sofa chair and quickly booted up my TV and launched Netflix. I was paranoid about nothing. I knew that, but stranger things have happened, and I wasn't going to assume I was safe. Despite not being able to hear the lady anymore, I cranked the volume over my usual listening threshold. I sat back and began to watch a documentary on panda preserves. Before I knew it, my eyes had grown heavy and my body and mind had given themselves over to sleep yet again. Sometime later, I jolted awake, the dark room and the TV off due to its power save setting. What had woken me was the soft pulsation of my phone as it vibrated. The caller ID read "Mom." I stared at it, half out of grogginess, half out of cowardice. Do I want to talk to her? Or, as it usually goes with my mother, do I want to be talked at by her? I decided against answering. I was already feeling annoyed at myself enough. I didn't need a good old dogpiling from my mother to top it all off. Plus, I had to pee. God, did I have to pee. I got up and hustled the few short steps into the connecting bathroom, flicked on the lights, and as I was about to unbuckle my pants, from past the door to my bedroom came the voice. It was the lady's voice. Joyful, sweet, energetic, loud, and very, very wrong. "I see you! Peekaboo! I see you!" There was no denying it now. The voice sounded human, but it wasn't. It was slightly warped, as if the edges of it were being warped, as if the mouth forming them was too misshapen to form them right, as if the voice projecting them was doing its best to mock it. My mind raced. This seemed unbelievable. This was absolutely less than 3 feet away, inside my apartment. Why was it doing this to me? I blinked hard and gathered what resolve I had. It didn't matter what or why this was happening. It just was. And I could safely conclude that whatever it was intending to scare me, or worse, to hurt me. I had my phone. I could call 911. That was step 1. Step 2, I had a baseball bat in my closet. I grabbed that and ready myself. Step 3, I had a small window that dropped down into the courtyard. It was on the 2nd floor, but I could manage the jump. I think. That's all I could think to do. With all the bluster and bravado I could muster, I quickly moved to the sofa chair and grabbed my phone, and made my way to open the closet and grab the bat, all in a few swift movements. All the while, the lady was cooing the same phrase over and over again on a loop, no more than 5 feet away. I wrestled with the lock on the bedroom window. It wasn't playing nice. I didn't think I'd ever opened it in the 4 years that I'd lived here, and it obviously hadn't been opened long before then. After struggling with the latch for what felt like eternity, it gave way. Then it proceeded to push up on the window. Luckily, it went flying up without much resistance, and as I pushed it up, it made a hard slamming sound, as if on cue when that happened. The chanting from the lady outside the door stopped. It was dead silent. The only discernible sound was my breathing, the night air flowing in and bringing with it the sounds of crickets and cicadas. I sat by the open window, wide-eyed, staring directly into the dinky lit room and laser-focused on the bedroom door. From beneath the door frame, an impossibly long arm silently began to stretch in. Skin pale, almost blue in the light, vascular, the fingers long, bony, and dressed in rings against their bulking knuckles. The fingernails, longer still and adorned in crimson polish, that almost seemed to glow in the drearily lit bedroom. The impossibly long arm effortlessly stretched up until its index finger touched the lock on the doorknob, as if waiting just a beat to heighten the tension. It clicked the lock. The door was unlocked. This lady could swing the door open, and whatever it was could cross the threshold into the room and come for me. I had to jump. The risk of breaking my leg be damned. I didn't want to see what ghoulish visage that arm belonged to. I steeled my nerves and jumped the 12 or so feet to the grassy courtyard below. I landed with a hard thud, but I didn't lose my balance. My adrenaline rushing, I made a hasty dash towards the center of the small complex. My legs were firing like pistons. I gunned it to the nearest light source, which happened to be a small gazebo. Then my fight-or-flight responses loosened enough for me to think. I gotta call the cops. As I approached the small structure, which was bathed in a harsh and singular white light, I pivoted to look back at my apartment window. No hand, no creature, no nothing. Just an open window. But what could I expect to see? Some ghoulish, haunting leer that came from the darkened opening? Some unholy visage, all teeth and elongated appendages, coaxing me back? What was going on with me? Was I having some sort of breakdown? Had the stress and the loneliness gotten to me? That was certainly a better explanation than what I was thinking was happening, right? I sighed, plopped down hard on the only bench housed under the gazebo, and unlocked my phone. I had a notification, an email. I knew no matter now wasn't the time. I needed to call the police. I needed to make sure my apartment was clear. If I was having a mental breakdown, I could get help. I needed this, whatever it was, to be over. But, you know, that often unseen hand that guides us to make the most inane decisions at the wrong moment, yeah, that one, that force propelled me to click on the email notification. God damn it, I wish I hadn't. It took me to a video. The video was dark, quiet, as if nothing was even playing, but then a loud static and the sounds of hands fumbling around as the frame was jilted and shook. And then, as if lit with a small and barely effective flashlight, a mouth plastered with a wry grin appeared. But, as with the voice, it was wrong. It was too wide, with far too many small teeth. The lips were thin and smeared with crimson lipstick, the same shade as the fingernails I'd seen just a moment ago. Then it began to move, to speak. "I see you, peekaboo. I see you." I felt my body flush with fear, confusion, anger. What the hell was happening? I tried to exit. I tried shutting my phone's power off, but nothing worked. I instinctively and forcefully dropped the phone. The mantra was on a disturbing repeat. The lady's joyous and warped voice, a disgusting lullaby I had to get away from. Whatever ungodly force had decided to visit me was breaking the bounds of reality and anything I understood. Neighbors, my mind yelled at me, go to the Carolwoods, ask to use their phone, call 911, figure this shit out, go! I spurred myself into action, running out from beneath the gazebo and towards the other two-story apartment complex, directly across from mine, navigating the dimly lit walkway up to their door. I didn't have concern for etiquette or what time it was. I was in pure self-preservation mode. I knocked on their door as loud as I could. What's the wife's name? Denise, Desiree, something with a D. I simultaneously scolded myself while trying to recall the woman's name. Her husband, who I'd only met once in passing, was a complete stranger. Before I could deliberate any further, the porch light popped on and a voice from behind the door wavered out at me. It was a man, the aforementioned husband. What the hell do you want? I'm so sorry to bother you, Mr. Carolwood, but someone broke into my house and I don't have my cell and I'm worried. I need to call the cops. I live across the way in Unit 17. He cut me off. Yeah, Christian, right? He said, his tone less unsure and worried and now more curious than annoyed. Christopher, I responded back hurriedly while throwing another glance at my apartment unit. Another voice, quieter, came out from behind him. A woman. Christopher, honey? Yeah, you sound scared. Let me get you some help. Thank God, Buddha, Shiva, Elvis, who the fuck ever. I sighed. I felt a wave of uncertain hope wash over me. The door unlatched and swung open to reveal a dark opening, one that seemed to stretch into a void. There was no one there. No Mr. Carolwood. No Mrs. Carolwood. Just a dark hallway and a voice that loudly reached from just beyond its bounds. I see you, peekaboo. I see you, Christopher. As quickly as I had felt hope, I felt my body give itself over to absolute terror. I spun around and attempted to run, but that long, pale blue arm, the one with its nails adorned in a bright, glowing crimson polish, had wrapped its unnatural fingers all the way around my calf. I fell hard on the "We're so glad you're here" welcome mat that decorated the front porch of the Carolwoods. I managed to turn my body around to see the arm that was pulling me into the void. I I couldn't see the creature it was attached to. I didn't want to. I needed to fight. I needed to get loose. But I was being dragged by force so strong, any attempt I made to swing my bat or kick was met with pure indifference. This is it, my mind raced. My heart thrashed inside my chest so hard I felt like I'd have a heart attack or worse, die of fear. I swung the bat. I yelled. I cursed. It was no use. I was being drawn into the maw of this entity, this being, this thing. I shut my eyes and waited to die. I stopped moving. I didn't feel the hand on my leg anymore. I felt warm. I jolted awake. I was in my apartment. The sticky heaviness of the room, just as it had been hours before. The golden light from the afternoon poured in through what cracks it could. What the hell? I thought. Did I just dream that? As I straightened my stiff and slightly aching body up and coming to grips with the absolute deja vu, a voice rang out from down the hall, this time slow and loud, and just past the threshold of my sight. Peekaboo, I see you. Well, as I always threatened to, I finally got to the store, so how about some marshmallows, maybe a little hot chocolate on a day like this? That sounds just about perfect to me. But, I don't know, maybe you're in the mood for more stories. Let's hear a story from a channel favorite and a good friend of mine. Let's hear one from Society Menace about the heartache that can be found when you lose the love of your life again and again, for no better reason than because, it may seem. Let's hear about an endless cycle that seems to go on and on forever. I never thought I'd dread waking up, but here I am, eyes squeezed shut, praying that when I open them, I'll see something, anything different. My name's Marcus Thomas, 32 years old, and I'm trapped in a nightmare that I can't escape. It started like any other day. I remember it perfectly. Every little detail. The smell of coffee brewing downstairs. The sound of Aisha humming in the kitchen. The warmth of the sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. I sat up, stretching, and glanced at the clock. 7:15 a.m., right on schedule. I padded downstairs, following the scent of breakfast. Aisha stood at the stove, her back to me, swaying slightly as she flipped pancakes. Her dark curls were piled up on her head, and she wore my old college t-shirt, the one with the hole in the sleeve that she refused to throw away. "Morning, beautiful," I said, wrapping my arms around her waist and planting a kiss on her neck. She laughed and leaned back against me. "Morning, sleepyhead. I was beginning to think you'd sleep through your alarm again." "Not a chance," I replied, reaching around her to snag a piece of bacon from a plate on the counter. "Can't be late today. Big presentation, remember?" Aisha swatted my hand playfully. "How could I forget? You've been stressing about it for weeks." We ate breakfast together, chatting about our plans for the day. Aisha had a busy schedule at the elementary school where she taught 3rd grade. I had my presentation to the board, which could lead to a big promotion if it went well. As I was finishing my coffee, Aisha glanced at her watch. "Oh, I better get going. Parent-teacher conference this afternoon, so I need to get there early to set up." She stood, grabbing her bag and her keys. I rose to walk her to the door, as I always did. "Knock 'em dead, babe," she said, stretching up on her toes to kiss me goodbye. "You're gonna do great." "Thanks. Have a good day." "Love you," I said, squeezing her hand. "Love you too," she called over her shoulder as she headed for the car. I watched her pull out of the driveway, waving as she drove. Then I went back inside to finish getting ready for work. The day passed in a blur of meetings and last-minute preparations. By the time my presentation rolled around at 3 p.m., I was running on pure adrenaline and caffeine. But it went well. Better than I'd hoped, actually. The board seemed impressed, and my boss even hinted at that promotion as we wrapped up. I was on cloud 9 as I packed up my things, ready to head home and celebrate with Aisha. I pulled out my phone to call her, wanting to share the good news right away. That's when everything changed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice I didn't recognize answered it. "Hello? Is this Marcus Thomas?" My stomach dropped. Something in the woman's tone sent ice through my veins. "Yes, this is Marcus," I replied, my voice suddenly hoarse. "Who is this?" "Mr. Thomas, this is Nurse Reeves at Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about your wife, Aisha. There's been an accident." The world tilted on its axis. I grabbed the edge of the desk, knuckles turning white. "What happened? Is she okay?" The pause before the nurse responded lasted an eternity. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thomas. Your wife was brought in about an hour ago. There was a multi-car pileup on the highway. The doctors did everything they could, but I'm afraid she didn't make it. I'm so sorry for your loss." The phone slipped from my hand, clattering on the floor. This couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake. I'd just seen Aisha this morning. We made plans for dinner. She was fine. She had to be fine. The next few hours passed in a haze. Somehow, I made it to the hospital. I remember the harsh fluorescent lights, the antiseptic smell, the pitying looks from the staff, and then seeing her lying there so still, so unlike the vibrant woman I'd kissed goodbye this morning. I don't know how long I sat there, holding her hand, willing her to wake up, to smile at me once more, to tell me this was all a cruel joke. But she didn't. Eventually, a gentle-voiced doctor came to take me away, to discuss arrangements I couldn't begin to comprehend. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember climbing the stairs to our bedroom. Our bed, where Alicia would never sleep again. I just remember collapsing onto the mattress, still in my suit, and praying that when I woke up, this would all be a terrible dream. Sleep came, eventually, a blessed escape from the crushing weight of grief. And then I opened my eyes. The smell of coffee drifted from downstairs, sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. For one blissful moment, I thought my prayers had been answered. Then I heard it, Alicia humming from the kitchen. I sat bolt upright, heart pounding, the clock on the nightstand reading 7:15 a.m. Impossible. I scrambled out of bed, nearly falling in my haste to get downstairs, and there she was, Alicia, alive and well, standing at the stove in my old college t-shirt, flipping pancakes. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, glancing over her shoulder at me. "I was beginning to think you'd sleep through your alarm." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This was impossible. "Marcus?" Alicia's smile faded, replaced by concern. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I crossed the kitchen in 2 slides, pulling her into my arms so tightly that she let out a surprised oof. "Whoa, what's gotten into you?" she laughed, returning the hug. "Bad dream," I managed to choke out, burying my face in her hair, breathing in her familiar scent. Really, really bad dream. Alicia pulled back, cupping my face in her hands. "Well, you're awake now. Everything's fine, okay?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, because suddenly I remembered I'd lived this before. Yesterday morning. The morning Alicia died. As we ate our breakfast, my mind raced. Had it all been a dream? Some kind of stress-induced hallucination? It had felt so real, so visceral, but here was Alicia, alive and well, talking about her parent-teacher conference as if nothing had happened. I tried to shake it off, the lingering dread, as Alicia gathered her things to leave, but as she reached for her car keys, panic seized me. "Wait, don't drive today, please," I blurted out, grabbing her wrist. She frowned. "What? Why not?" I I scrambled for an explanation that wouldn't make me sound insane. I have a bad feeling. Can you carpool with someone, or could I drive you? Marcus, I can't just change my plans at the last minute. I need my car for errands after work, remember? She studied my face, worry creasing my brow. Are you okay? That must have been some nightmare. I forced a smile, trying to appear calm. Yeah, sorry. I'm fine. Just be careful. I love you. I love you too, she replied, still looking concerned. Try not to stress too much about your presentation. You're going to do great. And then she was gone, just like before. I watched her pull out of the driveway, my heart in my throat. I spent the morning in a state of high anxiety, jumping every time my phone rang. But as the hours ticked by with no bad news, I started to relax. Maybe it really had just been a nightmare. My presentation went well, just as it had in my dream, memory. I wasn't sure what to call it anymore, so as I packed up my things afterward, I decided to call Alicia, just to put my mind at ease. The phone rang twice, 3 times. Hello? Is this Marcus Thomas? Ice flooded into my veins. The same voice, the same words. Mr. Thompson, this is Nurse Reeves from Mercy General Hospital. I'm calling about your wife, Alicia. She's been in an accident. No. This couldn't be happening. Not again. What happened? I demanded, even though I already knew the answer. I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson. Your wife was brought in about an hour ago. There was an accident at the school where she works. A student parent became violent, and I'm afraid Alicia didn't make it. I'm so sorry for your loss. The phone slipped from my numb fingers. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But as I raced to the hospital, as I saw Alicia's still form once again, as I held her lifeless hand, I knew it was all too real. And I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the core that when I woke up tomorrow, it would all begin again. I don't know how many times I've lived this day now. 10, 50, 100, they've all blurred together in a nightmarish haze of grief and desperation. Each morning, I wake up at 7:15 a.m. Each morning, I rush downstairs to find Alicia alive, humming in the kitchen. Each evening, no matter what I do, I receive that dreaded phone call. I've tried everything I can think of. I've begged her to stay home. I've faked an illness, a family emergency. I've disconnected her car battery. I've slashed her tires. I've hidden her keys. I've called the school with bomb threats. I've tried to get it shut down for the day. Nothing works. If Alicia stays home, she dies in a house fire. If she can't drive, she takes the bus, which crashes. If the school closes, she goes to run errands instead and gets caught in a store robbery gone wrong. It's like the universe itself is conspiring to take her from me, over and over and over again. Today I decided to try a different approach. Instead of trying to keep Alicia home or safe, I'll stay with her all day. Maybe if I'm there, I can protect her. When she leaves for work, I follow in my car. She notices, of course, pulling over after a few blocks. Marcus, what are you doing? She asks as I approach her window, her voice a mix of confusion and concern. I need to be with you today, I say, knowing how crazy that must sound. Please, Alicia, trust me. It's important. She studies my face for a long moment and then sighs. Okay, get in, but you're explaining on the way. As we drive, I try to tell her the truth about the time loop, about her dying every day, about my desperate attempt to save her. Alicia listens silently, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Finally, she says, Marcus, I think you need help. This isn't normal. Maybe we should go to the hospital instead of work. No, I said, making her jump. No hospitals. Please, Alicia, just let me stay with you today. If nothing happens, I promise I'll get help tomorrow. She agrees, reluctantly. We spend the day together at her school. I hover anxiously, scanning for threats, jumping at every sudden noise. Alicia's colleagues give us odd looks, but she makes excuses about a family situation. As the final bell rings, I begin to hope maybe this time it'll work out. Maybe I've finally broken the cycle. We're walking to her car when I hear the screech of tires. I turn to see a car careening towards us, the driver slumped over the wheel. Time slows. I reach for her, trying to pull Alicia out of the way, but I'm too slow. Always too slow. The impact throws us both. I hit the ground hard, my vision blurring. When it clears, I see her lying motionless a few feet away, a growing pool of blood beneath her. "No," I whisper, crawling towards her. "No, no, 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 not again, please, not again." But it's too late. By the time the ambulance arrives, she's gone. I'm left once more with the certainty that tomorrow it'll begin again. The next day, I don't even get out of bed. What's the point? Nothing I do makes a difference. Alicia always dies, and I'm left alone with the grief. I hear her calling from downstairs, concern in her voice, but I can't face her. I can't watch her die again. Eventually, she comes up to check on me. "Marcus, are you okay?" I roll over, burying my face in the pillow. "Go away, Alicia, please." The bed dips as she sits beside me, her hands gentle on my back. "What's wrong? Talk to me. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me." So I do. I tell her everything, my voice muffled by the pillow, about the time loop, about watching her die over and over, about the failed attempts to save her. When I finish, silence stretches between us. Then Alicia speaks, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't understand what's happening, Marcus, but I believe that you believe it. And I'm here. Whatever this is, we'll face it together." I roll over, meeting her eyes. The love and concern I see there breaks something inside me. I pull her into my arms, holding her tight as sobs rack my body. We spend the day at home, talking, crying, trying to make sense of the impossible situation. As evening approaches, I grow increasingly anxious. "Maybe it'll be different this time," she says, squeezing my hand. "Maybe staying home was the answer." I want to believe her, but as the clock ticks towards the dreaded hour, a sense of the inevitable settles over me. At 4:17, exactly when the call usually comes in, there's a knock on the door instead. Alicia moves to answer it, but I hold her back. "No, let me." I open the door to find two solemn-faced police officers. "Mr. Thompson, I'm afraid we have some bad news. There's been an accident." I don't hear them, because behind them on the street I see a familiar figure, a man in a dark suit, watching us. As our eyes meet, he smiles, a cold, cruel expression that chills me to the core. Then he turns and walks away, vanishing into thin air. I slam the door shut, my mind reeling. Who was that? What did it mean? But there's no time to ponder, because Alicia's on the floor, clutching her chest, gasping for air. Heart attack. That's what the paramedics say when they arrive. Nothing anyone could have done. As I watch them take Alicia's body away, that strange man's smile haunts me. For the first time, I wonder if there's more to this nightmare than I realize. The next morning, I wake up with a new determination. If I can't save Alicia, and God, it kills me to even think that, maybe I can at least find out why this is happening. I go through the motions of the morning, hugging Alicia tightly before she leaves. Then I set out to find the man in the suit. I drive around town, watching for him. Hours pass with no sign. As 4:17 approaches, I find myself near the park where Alicia and I had our first date. There he is, sitting on a bench, feeding pigeons. I approach cautiously, my heart pounding. "Who are you? Why are you doing this to me? He looks up, the same cold smile on his face. Ha, Marcus, I was wondering when you'd find me. You know my name? I know everything about you, Marcus. And Alicia. A chill runs down my spine. Are you... what? Are you God? The devil? The man's laughter rings out, harsh and mocking. Nothing so grand, I'm afraid. Think of me as an interested observer. Observer of what? I asked, my fist clenched at my side. He stands, brushing breadcrumbs off of his suit. Of you, Marcus. Of your pain, your grief, your desperation. It's all quite fascinating, really. Rage boils up inside me. I lunge at him, intent on wiping that smug smile off his face. But my hands pass right through him, like he's made of smoke. Now, none of that. We're just getting to know each other. Why? Why are you doing this? The man's smile fades, replaced by a look of cold curiosity. Why? Because I can. Because your suffering amuses me. Because I want to see how long it takes to break you completely. His words hit me like a physical blow. I stagger back, shaking my head in denial. No, this can't be real. You can't be real. Oh, I'm very real, Marcus. And this is very, very real. For you, at least. My phone rings. 4:17 p.m. I already know what I'm going to hear when I answer it. The man in the suit watches me, his head tilted in interest. Well, aren't you going to get that? I'm sure it's important news about dear Alicia. I want to run, I want to scream, I want to wake up from this nightmare, but I'm rooted to the spot, trapped in this moment of horror. As I raise the phone to my ear, the man in the suit begins to fade away, but his parting words echo in my mind long after he's gone. Sweet dreams, Marcus. I'll see you tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. The revelation of the man in the suit haunts me. Each day as I wake to the sound of morning routine, I'm torn between my desperate need to save Alicia and my burning desire to understand, to defeat this cruel entity that's toying with our lives. Today I decide to ignore him completely, focus all my energy on Alicia, determined to find some way, any way, to break the cycle. Let's run away, I blurt out over breakfast. Alicia pauses, fork halfway to her mouth. What? Let's just go. Right now. Get in the car and drive until we can't anymore. She studies my face, concern etching lines around her eyes. Marcus, what's going on? You've been acting strange for days now. I take her hand, willing her to understand. Please, Alicia, trust me. We need to leave, now. Maybe it's the desperation in my voice, or maybe it's the love that's carried us through 7 years of marriage. Whatever the reason, Alicia nods. Okay, well, let's go. We throw some clothes in a bag and hit the road. As we drive out of town, I keep glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the man in the suit following us. But the highway behind us remains clear. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, I begin to hope. We drive for hours, putting miles between us and the town where Alicia has died 100 times. We laugh, we sing along to the radio, we reminisce about old road trips. As the sun begins to set, we pull into a small coastal town. Let's stay here tonight, Alicia suggests, pointing to a quaint little bed and breakfast. I check my watch. 6:43. We made it past 4:17, past the time Alicia always dies. We did it, I whisper, tears prickling in my eyes. We really did it. Alicia squeezes my hand. Did what, babe? Before I can answer, a commotion down the street catches my attention. A crowd is gathered, pointing at something in the sky. Is that a plane? Someone shouts. It's flying awfully low. My blood runs cold. No, you can't be. The roar of engines fill the air. I grab Alicia, trying to pull her to safety, but it's too late. The plane crashes into the bed and breakfast in a deafening explosion of fire and debris. In the chaos that follows, the screaming, the sirens, the frantic attempts at rescue, I search desperately for my wife. Deep down, I already know. As I stand there, watching the firefighters battle the blaze, I feel a presence beside me. Did you really think it would be that easy? The man in the suit asks, his tone conversational. That you could outrun fate? I don't look at him. Can't look at him. Why? Why her? Why us? He shrugs, the moment visible from the corner of my eye. Why not? Your pain is exquisite. Your love, your desperation, your growing madness, it's all so deliciously human. I'll stop you. Somehow, I'll find a way. His laughter's like broken glass. Oh, Marcus, I do hope you try. It'll make this game so much more interesting. I wake up the next morning with a new plan. If I can't save Alicia by changing her fate, maybe I can save her by changing mine. I go through the motions of our morning routine, one last time, savoring every moment with her. As she leaves for work, I kiss her deeply. I love you, I say. Always remember that. She smiles, a little puzzled. I love you too. You sure you're okay? I nod, forcing a smile. I'm fine. Have a great day, babe. As soon as she's gone, I start gathering supplies. Rope, a chair, a notepad. I write Alicia a letter, pouring out everything. The time loop, the deaths, the man in the suit. I tell her how much I love her, how sorry I am I couldn't save her. I beg her to live a full, happy life. Then I prepare the noose. Just before 4:17, I position myself on the chair. My plan is simple. If I die first, maybe the loop will break. Maybe Alicia will live. As I stand there, heart pounding, the man in the suit appears. My, this is certainly a new approach. Go to hell. You first, he smiles, cold and cruel. I take a deep breath, close my eyes, and step off the chair. The rope pulls tight, and I wake up gasping, back in bed. 7:15 a.m. Another failed attempt. But something's different this time. There's no smell of coffee, no sound of Alicia humming downstairs. I rush to the kitchen, my heart in my throat. It's empty. It's cold. Alicia, I call out, panic rising. Alicia, where are you? She's not here, Marcus, a familiar voice says from behind me. I whirl to find the man in the suit, lounging in my armchair, looking utterly at ease. What did you do? Where is she? He examines his nails, the picture of casual indifference. I didn't do anything. You did. What are you talking about? He sighs, as if explaining to a particularly slow child. You changed the rules, Marcus. You died first. So now, she never existed. The world spins around me. I grab the counter to keep from falling. No, bring her back, please. Can't bring back someone who was never born, he says, standing. But don't worry. I'm sure we can find a new way to continue our little game. As the truth of what I'd done sinks in, I slid to the floor, a scream of anguish tearing up my throat. The man in the suit watches, a small, satisfied smile on his face. Well, shall we begin again? He asks, straightening his jacket. The world fades to black, and I brace myself for whatever fresh hell awaits. Because now I know the truth. There's no escape, no way to win, just an eternity of loss and pain, and the cruel smile of the man in the suit. But as consciousness returns, something feels off. The bed beneath me is harder than usual. The air smells different, antiseptic, sterile. I open my eyes to find myself in a hospital room. Machines beep steadily around me, and there, holding my hand, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, is Alicia. Oh my God, Marcus, can you hear me? I try to speak, but my throat is dry, raw. Alicia holds a cup of water to my lips. What happened? You've been in a coma for 3 months. There was an accident on your way to work. The doctors, they weren't sure you'd ever wake up. My mind reels. A coma? Was it all a dream? The time loops, the deaths, the man in the suit? As if summoned by my thoughts, I see a flicker of movement by the door. The man in the suit stands there, watching. But this time, his smile doesn't seem cruel. It's almost approving. He nods once, then vanishes. Marcus, are you okay? Alicia asks, her voice pulling me back. Should I call the doctor? I look at her, really look at her. My beautiful, vibrant, alive wife. Whatever happened, whatever was real or not real, none of it matters now. I'm okay. Everything is okay, I say, squeezing her hand. As Alicia calls the doctor, I close my eyes, savoring the feeling of her hand in mine. I don't know if I've won, lost, or simply been released from some cosmic game, but I do know one thing. I'll never take a single moment with Alicia for granted again. Darn, I did it again. Looks like I always overtoast my marshmallows. Most of them are pretty charred by the time they either go into a s'more or go into my mouth, but I think it'll float on the surface of that hot chocolate just right. While we test the buoyancy of my mostly charred marshmallow, let's get another story going. This one is by an old friend of the channel, gone from the charts, but certainly not from our hearts. Let's hear a story by the incomparable CIA Herpes about taking a job as a security guard on an island for a very strange group of clientele. After high school, having no better ideas, I joined the Navy SEALs. I never really liked any of it, but it was a job, after all. I love the guns, the airplanes, the grenades, but having to run all the time while some scumbag with a chip on his shoulder yells in your face isn't my idea of fun. Things got a lot more interesting after my term of service ended. I still had a high security clearance, so I used it to take temporary jobs as a mercenary, hired gun. I did some stints in Iraq with Blackwater, where they sent me out in the middle of the desert. A watchtower, an oil refinery looming over the burning sands. Along with a few other guys, they told us, guard the area with your life. While better than the SEALs, working for Blackwater was extremely boring. The other mercenaries and I would mostly just chain smoke cigarettes and drink coffee all night, staring out across the dead, empty desert. Over time, I worked my way up. Things started to get more interesting when a job offer arrived in my email one afternoon. This is what it said. Mr. Chase, I am the head of security for a private group of entrepreneurs and investors. Through some mutual contacts, I've heard of your professionalism and experience. We're currently putting together a small crew of guards for a private event on Redacted Island out in the Pacific Ocean that will run from January 9th to January 27th. Would you be interested in this job? The pay rate is $900 a day. Once you're on the island, it will be impossible to leave until the period of employment has ended. If you're interested, please respond to this email as soon as possible. Sincerely, Mario Antonin, Head of Security. I'd worked jobs like this from time to time, but none of them were paying that well. At most, I would usually get $350 to $500 a day, which was still good money when I was working 7 days a week, till the job finished. I instantly responded and said yes, I was interested. In response, they sent me a non-disclosure agreement, that was the size of a small novel. That was how I found myself on a private jet, flying out to an island in the middle of the vast blue sea. I was never told the coordinates of the island, or saw it on a map. It was all kept very secret. A few hours later, we landed on a private airstrip. I looked out the window of the jet, seeing the tropical waters of the Pacific Ocean, stretching off to the horizon in every direction. Below me stood an island with palm trees and sandy white beaches. An enormous Victorian mansion loomed directly in the center of it all. The mansion was painted black and looked like something straight out of a horror movie. It had no windows, and the turrets spiraled up into blade-like points. That was my first inkling that something might not be quite right about this trip. As the stairs to the private jet descended, I looked out on this strange new world. Employees waited to greet us, looking like beaten dogs. Some had their heads down, their eyes blankly scanning the ground. Most of them were women wearing red dresses, reminding me of stewardesses on the plane. The jet strip was surrounded by palm trees and tropical brush. The chirping of insects sounded all around us, high and resonant. I saw a strange patch engraved on all the employees' uniforms. It looked like a stick figure drawing of a man, the bottom of his body ending in a C. Its arms were long and jointed, almost spidery. 3 symbols, like repeating iron crosses, connected the left side of the body in the line. I wondered if it was the logo of some company. I put it out of my mind for now, but I'd see that symbol again all over the island, painted on the side of the mansion, and even cut into the trees with a knife. It would only be later that night that I realized its connection to Moloch. "Good day, sir, and welcome to the island," the server on my left said, with glassy eyes and a fake smile. They all looked up at once, but it was like the workers all looked through me rather than at me. Their eyes looked flat and dead, like painted-on doll's eyes. "The island, huh? They wouldn't tell us where we were going. They said it was a secret. Is that what you call it?" The woman just nodded, the doll-like smile never leaving her face. "Officially, this island is unnamed and uninhabited," the woman said. "In fact, all traces of it have been scrubbed from the internet. You won't find it on Google Maps or any other publicly available satellite imagery." She leaned forward towards me with heavily mascaraed eyes and ruby red lipstick splashed across her lips. "This is a very special place. Only very special people are allowed here. We should be honored to work here under our Savior." "I hope you're talking about Jesus or something," I said jokingly. She just smiled blankly and motioned me forward. "Just follow the trail for a few hundred feet," she said, pointing at an opening in the palm trees where logs were laid down horizontally over the muggy jungle, "and you'll find the mansion. Good luck." I thought it was somewhat of a strange thing to say, wishing a random stranger luck. By the end of the night, I realized that simply to make it off the island alive, I might need that luck. I followed the woman's directions to the back of a brutalist mansion. A heavy metal door stood there with a small bulletproof window atop it. A tanned Spanish face glowered out at me, then rapidly drew back and disappeared. A few heartbeats later, the door slid to the side on a gliding of hidden gears. The head of security at the island was a heavily tattooed ex-Marine named Mario. He wore a dark Kevlar vest over his black outfit, making him look like a walking shadow. I found the security had their own private complex in the mansion, as he showed me around the site. Hundreds of hidden cameras covered every angle of the mansion, and the surrounding parts of the island, too. Dozens of black-clad security agents swarmed over the screens, checking monitors and computers constantly. "Quite a setup you've got here," I said to Mario, nodding at him. He smacked me on the shoulder, giving me a confident grin. "Money's no issue here, Richard. Security is paramount. There are things on this island that could rip apart the world, if ever they escaped." I raised an eyebrow. "Like what? Nuclear weapons or something?" I asked, with a laugh. "You'll see for yourself later," he said, his dark eyes flashing with something cold and alien. Mario led me in a couple of the new hired guns around the island. Place was certainly strange. Reminded me of some combination of secret black ops site and a playboy billionaire's private heaven. All the doors in the mansion looked like they were made of thick steel. They had wheels that would spin, like those on a submarine. The mansion also had no windows at all, at least none that I could see, except for the small shatterproof glass openings on the steel doors. I don't want to ask too many questions, however. Couldn't resist asking him a couple of small things, though. At least, they seemed small to me. "What are those hatchways?" I asked Mario, pointing to the rectangular covers built into the concrete walkways. They had heavy handles. Are those manholes or something? "They're tunnels under the island, just for maintenance and security, you understand." "Wow, this place is certainly well developed," I said. We came out through a grove of palm trees. A stone walkway led down a white beach. Dozens of yachts were moored all across the shore, some of them looking like they must have cost hundreds of millions of dollars. "There's a lot of money and power here. That's why it's important you never talk about what you see here. There are people who control the world, the ones beyond the government and the media, not the elected officials who people see, but the actual power." "Like who? You mean the Rothschilds or the Soreses?" I laughed again, a sarcastic, grinding laugh that grated my nerves. "Trust me, the truly powerful ones don't even have public personas. If you know their names, then they're just one of the puppets." I just shook my head at that, and then asked the real question that had been bothering me since I arrived. "Who's the Savior?" I asked. "Is that some code name or something?" Mario froze in place. "He's the one who runs everything here," he whispered conspiratorially, looking around nervously. "But don't be mentioning that kind of shit here. You'll probably see him tonight anyway. He's the one who runs the show. He'll be on the stage in his normal outfit." By the end of the day, I was suited up like the rest of the security staff, wearing the pure black pants and shirt with the symbol of Moloch engraved over the heart. Hundreds of the world's most famous politicians, actors, businessmen, artists had gathered, streaming in the front gate with a lot of soft, quiet chatter. I stood by the open doorway of a side exit with my AR-15 and body armor next to one of the other soldiers. They had also given me a sidearm. Every entrance or exit was manned by at least 2 armed men. The security at this place was some of the most intense I'd ever seen. Beyond the door, there were rows after rows of the most comfortable seats, all gathered in a semicircle around a massive stage made of pure mahogany. Blood-red curtains stood closed in front of the room, concealing their secret, for now at least. I heard the elites inside calling out their praise for Satan. I didn't want to look at the rows of high-ranking politicians, celebrities, influencers, and what have you, but my curiosity was high. I peeked around the corner of the stone archway, seeing the red curtains on the stage drawing apart. Saw one of my favorite actors standing in the front row, clapping excitedly and jumping up and down. The crowd cheered as a naked female, strapped to an obsidian altar, lay there. She was beautiful, blonde, probably no older than 20, with the face of a supermodel. Her mouth was gagged, her arms outstretched like Jesus on the cross. Thin leather cords were tied around her wrists and ankles, biting deeply into the skin. Her eyes rolled wildly as she shook her head from side to side. She froze as her eyes met mine for a brief moment. I saw the pleading expression there, the mortal terror, the absolute horror. A man in a goat mask wearing black robes slunk out from the side of the stage, carrying a wavy silver dagger engraved with strange symbols. The crowd erupted into a primal roar of pleasure and excitement that sounded like it came from a monstrous mouth. "Worthy is the Lamb," the man in the goat mask screamed with electric amplification. He had a deep voice, as if he had rocks rolling around in his throat. The crowd roared and clapped. Scattered cries of "Hail Lucifer" and "Ah, Satan" echoed from the massive auditorium. "Hey, pay attention," the other security agent said at my side with a thick Finnish accent. He was a tall Scandinavian guy named Kolmek, You're not getting paid to watch the show, new guy. I tried to rip my gaze away from the stage, but it held my attention with the obsessive horror. The burnt bones of children and women have been offered to the Ancient Ones, to Moloch, the man on the stage said. Under our feet, the burnt bodies of hundreds lay dreaming. This victim will be the 666th. Her body will bring about the genesis we seek, the direct experience of the divine held by the gods, by Lucifer and Moloch and Baal. The roaring of the crowd temporarily drowned out the electrified magnification of his voice. Tonight, we will rip open the veil. I had stopped watching the show, instead staring blankly out at the beach and the palm trees. At that moment, another black-clad security agent came up to my partner, whispering something in his ear, then immediately disappeared, heading off back in the direction of the main security office. Kolomek shook his head grimly. I'll be right back, he said. Stay right here. Don't move from this door no matter what. And pay attention. I nodded and watched as he walked off in the same direction. I immediately took the opportunity to continue watching the ceremony. I'd missed something important, apparently. The woman now lay dead on the sacrificial table, a gaping hole in her chest. Blood spurted from the crater as the man in the goat mask held her beating heart grasped tightly in his hands, letting the blood stream down his naked fingers. The crowd cheered with a rising bloodlust and insanity. Most of them were standing, their eyes gleaming and wide with fanatical adoration. The entire spectacle reminded me of some kind of ancient Aztec ritual. As the woman's sightless eyes stared vacantly up in death, the man in the goat mask pulled out a can of gasoline. The clear liquid gurgled as he upended the canister over her pale, bloodless face, over her naked stomach and long legs. A moment later, he lit a match and dropped it. I heard the whooshing of the flames as they rose up. The crowd went deathly silent as they watched the rippling flames. The man in the goat mask began chanting in some strange language I had never heard before. Sounded Semitic, but I knew it wasn't Arabic or Hebrew. I felt something like electricity ripple through the air, almost like a feeling of falling pressure before a storm. I looked down at the hairs on my arms, seeing them rise up. I looked back up at the stage, and my eyes widened in horror. The flaming body of the sacrificial victim had started to morph before my eyes and the eyes of the crowd around me. The dripping, blackening flesh jumped up and down, as if there were rats trapped in her body trying to escape. There was a deafening hissing, as if 1,000 snakes were being burned alive. The dead woman's arms jerked up, the skin splitting open as if she had seams running along her skin. Something dark and muscular with curving black talons ripped its way out of the dead, burning flesh. Behind it, a head appeared with long, curving horns and eyes that spun with whirls of fire. It looked like the offspring of a bull and a demon. Its imposing body rose from the inferno, appearing like magic from the solid stone. It raised itself to its full height, looming over the crowd, the last of the woman's blood hissing and boiling away as her flesh dissolved into ashes. Behold, Moloch rises, the man in the goat mask screamed in fanatical joy. The crowd cheering had stopped, though. Many of the faces in the crowd looked chalk white with terror. A bull god surveyed the crowd, its horns nearly scraping the ceiling 20 feet above the stage. At that moment, I knew death was on its way, with eyes of fire and a grin like a skull, ready to reap the field of human bodies. I heard running behind me, but I didn't dare turn away from the horrific sight. The last of the fire's embers died, sending up thin wisps of gray smoke that spiraled around the bull god's monstrous face. Moloch stood as still as a statue. If it weren't for one thing, I might have thought it was some sort of sculpture or an art project. He had 2 nostrils like a serpent's. As his great lungs inhaled, The smoke billowed in and out of his mouth and nose. Some of the people at the edge of the crowd had gotten up, hurrying towards the door. Moloch's head ratcheted to face them, his fiery eyes narrowing into slits. "Do not leave," the man in the goat mask pleaded. "Those who have fear are not worthy of life. Do not prove yourselves unworthy of life." As the first of the fleeing men and women got to within a few steps of the door, Moloch gave a primal roar. In a blur of strength, he reached down and ripped the blackened sacrificial altar off the stage. It ripped from the wood with a tremendous crack, like a bullwhip. He hurled the heavy mass of stone at those heading towards the opposite exit, the one I was guarding. I watched it curve through the air. The people started screaming and clawing to escape as it smashed down on their heads with a grating crash. I could feel the floor shake from where I stood outside. Blood exploded from their smashed bodies. I saw arms and legs jerking and seizing under the heavy stone, but within a few moments they slowed and stopped. Others were running towards the exit, but Moloch leapt off the stage in a blur. In a few bounding steps, he reached the pale, terrified faces on the outside of the threshold. His massive clawed hands came down. I heard bones shatter as blood sprayed my face on the wall. Bone splinters and pieces of brain exploded from the screaming bodies. I backpedaled, wiping my eyes, trying to get the blood off so I could see. No one had told me what to do in this situation. I didn't know if I was supposed to shoot that massive thing or if this was all just part of the show. "Richard," a familiar voice cried from behind me. Panic oozed from every word. I spun, seeing Mario and Colomek standing side by side, their pupils dilated and their expressions grim. "We have a major problem." "I know," I said, holding my rifle tightly. I pointed behind me at the scene of rampant death and destruction. I'd seen bloodshed and war before, but this was different. The island itself seemed to feel it. The wind, which had been calm when I first arrived, now whipped the island in a fast circular motion. The breezes smelled of burnt matches and coppery blood. The static electricity, which had caused the hairs on my arm to rise, rippled over everything, with tiny blue flashes, increased in power by the second. "No, not Moloch," Kalak said, looking calmer than I felt. "The Savior lets Moloch thin the herd every year." "It's Leviathan, the beast from the water. It smells the blood and is drawn from the depths of the ocean. We picked up the first blips on the radar a few minutes ago. When it gets here, it won't stop until everything is rubble. It'll kill everyone on the island." "All security personnel must report to the South Beach immediately," a cool robotic voice cried out over hidden loudspeakers all over the island. The screaming from the auditorium had quieted behind me. I was afraid to look inside. "There it is," Colmack said, his head jerking up as the emergency alert sounded. "It's time to fight," he said, motioning me to follow. We sprinted over curving trails of smooth logs between deadly quiet forests. All the insects and birds had gone silent. Ahead of us, the palm trees opened up onto the Pacific Ocean, but it was no longer a beautiful tropic blue. A black, swirling whirlpool, like an ulcerous wound, had opened up on its surface. It stretched hundreds of feet across, drawing closer to the shore by the second. Dead fish, sharks, dolphins, squids, even whales spun in the filthy dark water. 20 black-clad security agents waited for the three of us on the beach, their eyes wide, their faces pale with terror. Like myself, they all had AR-15s and Glocks with extra magazines for both. I guess the Glocks might be useful for blowing my brains out if it was a last resort, over being eaten by some hell beast, but I didn't think it would stop anything from another dimension. The clouds swirled overhead in a thick curtain as black as smoke. Flashes of blue lightning detonated every couple of seconds. Mario raised his hand, screaming over the roaring of the wind. Colomek stood by my side, his face grim and his eyes narrowed. "Your job is to fight off anything that tries to get on the island," Mario said, looking from one face to another with rapt attention. "Nothing can stand against high-caliber rifle fire. Shoot at the face and eyes when it comes up. We've dealt with creatures like this before, and they will retreat if you injure them badly enough. I had the sense of being fed a line of bullshit as my mind processed this. What exactly is coming up? One of the doe-eyed security men asked. He barely looked old enough to drink, a young, muscular hulk with a Marine Corps tattoo on his neck. It is called Leviathan. Sometimes the ritual here and the smell of blood can draw strange things. Leviathan is one of those. We have encountered it before. Most important thing to remember is... His voice was suddenly drowned out by the terrible cacophony that came from the center of the whirlpool. A screech like the detonation of a nuclear missile shook the ground. The ocean jumped and bubbled frantically. The beach heaved and creaked, the white sand disappearing in fissures that opened up like greedy mouths underneath my feet. I lost my balance, falling forwards. The screeching continued, rising into a primal roar. A green dragon head, the color of an infected wound, erupted from the surface of the thrashing water, rising up dozens of feet in the air. It had two enormous slitted eyes that dilated and constricted quickly, as if glowering down at us. The screeching abruptly stopped, the pointed mouth of the dragon slamming shut with a sound like a gunshot. Within moments, another cancerous green head shot up in a blur, its skin looking as hard as stone. Ridges that looked as sharp as swords ran the length of its reptilian skull, arcing over its eyes and pointed snout. More heads erupted from the ocean, until all 7 of Leviathan's heads loomed over us. Not one of us fired. Not one of us even seemed to breathe as we surveyed the beast across the no-man's land of white sand. The slitted eyes and yellowed irises of the 7 heads had a demonic hunger, a reptilian coldness. Far behind us I heard a distant scream still echoing from the auditorium, where Moloch held sway. "Fire!" Mario cried. Instantly a cacophony of gunshots exploded all around me. I jumped to my feet, scrambling up as the 7-headed dragon leapt forward. Thousands of gallons of salt water streamed down its massive body as it came up on the beach. Long black paws with bone-white talons shot out of the surging ocean, followed by a tapering tail like a water snake's. I brought the rifle up and emptied my magazine as fast as I could, pulling the trigger over and over as I aimed at the many slitted eyes of Leviathan. The bullets seemed to ping harmlessly off its hard obsidian scales, though. It scrambled onto the shore, its heads coming down in a blur, rows and rows of vampiric fangs gleaming dully in each of its mouths. One security agent was bit in half, the spurting stump of its lower body still standing for a long moment, even as the rest of the body disappeared down the throat of the dragon. Mario ran forward, slamming another magazine into his rifle and opening fire point blank. One of the heads came down in a blur towards him. Its great staring eyes exploded in a shower of blue blood and thick viscous fluid. The dragon's head pulled back, its mouth opening in a primal scream of agony. As I reloaded, I scanned the area around me, realizing that nearly half the security guys were either dead or critically injured. I backpedaled away, keeping my eyes on the dragon. It continuously drew forward, killing more of its enemies with every step. I turned and ran for the forest, the sounds of shattering bones and dying men ringing through the air with a sickening clarity behind me. Once I'd reached the borders of the trail, I heard Mario yell, "Retreat!" behind me. By that point, it was too late, though. "Hey, wait up," a voice whispered from behind me. I turned my head, seeing Colomac. Spatters of drying blood covered his face and uniform. As far as I could tell, none of it was his. "Mario's dead. They're all dead. We need to get out of here. We need to get off the island." "How?" "Find the Savior," he answered, panting and out of breath. "We must find him. He can get us out of here." "I don't even know what the guy looks like. He was wearing a goat mask." "You'll know him when you see him. His body is covered in scars, everything except his face. Stay close to me. We need to watch each other's back. It's our only chance of survival. A trail of twisted, broken bodies led from the mansion to the surrounding trails of the beaches. A decapitated woman with a solid gold necklace embedded with diamonds lay in front of me. It was strange on the island, the way oblivion and ineffable wealth coexisted side by side. Everything was deathly silent now, even in the mansion's auditorium. "Where's the savior?" I asked through gritted teeth. I peeked my head into the auditorium, but nothing moved. Hundreds of smashed and bloodied bodies littered the floor. "He's around here somewhere," Kalamek answered. He started circling the mansion, looking for signs of life. Kalamek took the lead. As he turned a corner, an enormous black hand with sharp claws of fingers flitted towards us in a blur, wrapping itself around his chest. Kalamek gave a strangled cry as it closed around him. I heard the bones crush as a spout of blood and gore flew from his mouth and nose, as if it were a toothpaste tube being squeezed. I backpedaled away as Moloch threw the twitching corpse aside like a discarded toy. It smashed into the wall of the mansion, exploding wetly, a human-shaped, bloody stain languidly dripping down the wall above Kalamek's mangled body. Moloch slowly turned his head towards me, the fiery eyes flashing with hunger. He gnashed his fangs together, taking a step forward with legs the size and shape of tree trunks. With every step he took, I felt the ground tremble. "Stop!" I cried, moving away from the monstrous creature. "Why are you doing this?" "There is no why," he gurgled, his voice monstrous and inhumanly slow. "There is only power. The weak deserve to die. Only the strong are worthy of life." I raised my rifle in a last-ditch effort to save myself. Moloch saw it and started running towards me, every step crushing the paved walkway around the mansion into rubble and dust. I aimed for his eyes and nose, emptying the entire magazine as quickly as I could. The bullets smashed into Moloch's face. Dark red clotted blood dripped out of the wounds, writhing with maggots. Drops of it fell around me, landing on my hair and face. I felt the small larva twist all over my skin. Moloch's blood smelled nauseating, like some combination of stink bugs and rotting bodies. He slowed, giving a roar of pain. I turned to run in the opposite direction, but as I looked out in the direction of the beach, my heart dropped. Leviathan was moving in our direction, the giant dragon head looming over the trees. Quickly, it swept towards me, like a dark wind. "You will suffer for that, worthless slave," Moloch growled, wiping blood from his fiery eyes with his sharp talons. A sudden idea came to me. I ran in the direction of Leviathan. Moloch followed closely at my heels, only a few steps behind. Leviathan slithered towards us over the sand and trees, its enormous body undulating like a water snake's. I screamed at it incoherently. Its 7 heads snapped towards me. Its slitted eyes widened as it saw Moloch. I heard the crashing of Moloch's footsteps behind me, only feet away from crushing me into paste. His massive lungs heaved, breath coming quickly, exhaling the odor of sulfur and smoke. "Leviathan," Moloch growled in his demonic voice. "These are my tributes." Leviathan's dragon head looked straight up at the sun and screamed in response, their many voices rising and falling in a dissonant wail. As I sprinted into the trees, Leviathan and Moloch ran at each other, colliding with an ear-splitting crash. I glanced back, seeing Moloch ripping one of the dragon's heads off its neck with his sharp fingers. The head screamed as blue blood erupted from the stump. After a moment, the neck fell limply forward. The other dragon heads bit Moloch in a unified attack. They ripped deep holes in his shoulder and arms, snapping over and over like rabid dogs. As the two eldritch monstrosities attacked each other in a fierce battle, I lost sight of them, but the sounds of fighting echoed over the entire island, crashing like lightning. I felt like the survivor of an apocalypse. I couldn't find a single other living person on the island. Hundreds of crushed, broken, and decapitated bodies surrounded me. Over the cacophony of fighting, I heard a new noise, the whirring of a helicopter nearby. It was coming from the other side of the mansion. Frantically, I sprinted towards the other side, seeing a Black Hawk helicopter getting ready to land. A man in black robes sat in the pilot's seat, his green eyes gleaming as a wide smile spread across his face. I smashed my fist into the door over and over until he opened it. "Holy shit, you're still alive?" he asked. I hadn't seen this man before. He had a face like a Calvin Klein model, all sharp angles and high cheekbones, perfectly proportioned in every way. But his scalp looked melted and scarred, as if someone had thrown gasoline on his hair and ignited it. His eyes were stunted, twisted growths of scar tissue. His hands, too, were covered in deep, folding burn scars. Are you the Savior?" I responded quickly. "Please get me out of here." "They call me that," he said wistfully. "The Savior, yes, I guess I am. Get in." The Savior stared at me with his strange green eyes, the color of swamps where monstrous things swam under the surface. "Some people just need to learn the hard way," he said. The helicopter took off into the dark night, covered with bright twinkling stars. There is no great power without great responsibility, after all. Those of us who seek the Ancient Ones know it comes with a cost. I just stared out the window, gazing down at the countless mutilated bodies that littered the beach. Below us, the face of the bull stared up with eyes of fiery cyclones. The broken, still body of Leviathan lay at its feet. As we made it over the great waters of the Pacific Ocean, the bull god raised its hand and waved. At that moment, I thought I could almost see a hurricane of translucent souls circling around him, spiraling up into the sky. Well, we've hit that halfway point, which is always a little bittersweet, much like the hot cocoa that I picked out, apparently. I can't help it. I really like dark chocolate, and I thought it would be better in cocoa than this. But while we mull over my terrible cocoa selection, let's hear another story by a great contributor to the channel named Towesey. This one's about maybe a time when you have encountered a serial killer and what you might have done if you hadn't been as careful as you were. So let's find out if you or I, or even the subject of the story, have ever met a serial killer. Have you ever met a serial killer? I think I did, and I'm relieved that I didn't know it at the time. I used to chat a lot on MSN Messenger when I was in college. I was a shy and kind of nerdy girl, so talking and flirting with random guys was much easier when it was online instead of in the real world. We used to have a lot of internet stores that you could go and pay a couple of bucks and use the computer a couple times a week. I mean, it was the early 2000s, and technology wasn't available to everyone just yet. Sometimes it was just writing, and sometimes we'd use the cameras. There was this one guy that I remember really well. He was a lawyer, or so he said. He always refused to use the camera, even after we'd known each other for about a year. He was witty and funny, and I really liked him. He was a little bit older than me, and he was pretty good at sex talk, which was somehow appealing to a girl in her late teens. He was always asking personal questions. Where do you live? Do you live alone? Do you live with your family? Do you have a boyfriend? Can you travel alone? Of course, I always diluted the conversation and never gave him any information. Sometimes I would tell him a fake story, but then he would ask details, and I would end up telling him that it was fake and laughing about it. You would think it would bother him, but it didn't. He would always laugh and say it was just my wild imagination. I think our virtual relationship lasted for about 3 years. Now that I'm thinking about it, it lasted until I graduated college. One time he came to town where I was living. I was in my senior year. He said it was for work and insisted that we meet up. I agreed and told him about a coffee place where I like to drink coffee. He declined and said he had to work all day and that he'd be available after 9 p.m. and proposed that we meet in the apartment where he was staying. I thought it was weird, but at the same time I was excited and eager to meet him in real life. I finally agreed and told myself I'll just pass by and say hello, and that'll be that. We agreed to meet the following day. He sent me the address, and because I know the area, I knew I would find my way easily. Unfortunately, that day at university, we had to prepare for a conference, me and a group of friends. The meeting took us longer than I'd planned, so I sent a message to the guy telling him that I had an unexpected bit of work to finish and I couldn't make it. He never responded, and I never heard from him again. A few years passed, and I moved to another city where I was pursuing a PhD. One day, out of nowhere, I received a mail from this guy. It was just a regular mail, where he was asking how I was doing and what I'd been up to lately. Honestly, I was a little bit surprised. We exchanged a few emails after that, and he told me he'd be happy to meet up if I was able to make time for him. That made me laugh. I thought, well, maybe it's time to finally meet this guy. Where I was living happened to be an hour away from the city he was living in. After a few back and forths and some more emails, he gave me the address. The location struck me as odd, but I didn't really think about it at the time. It was a bit out of the way, in a city I had visited a few times before. It was a new neighborhood. I didn't even think people were living there yet. The way I was supposed to get to his house was a bit weird, too. He said he would guide me on the phone and tell me how to get to his place. I took the train anyway, arriving at the station, and took a cab as I headed towards his neighborhood. I had to stop at an intersection and follow his instructions on the phone as he said. When the cab arrived at the intersection, the driver asked me if I was sure where I was going. I lied and told him this was the right area. I was surrounded by suburb villas, the kind with high walls and well-maintained front trees. It was a bit unnerving as I walked on the street where he said he lived. It was quiet. Too quiet. At the end of the street there was a dozen duplexes with well-maintained hedges instead of fences. The street was empty but for two cars that passed by before I took a turn into an alleyway. I called him and he took me from there. I followed his instructions until I stopped in front of a duplex with a garage and a well-maintained front lawn. There was no car outside, and all the windows seemed to be closed but on the upper floors. The space in front of the garage was unexpectedly clean, and for a moment I thought maybe I had missed the right house. That's when I heard him say on the phone, "I can see you. Come on ahead inside." Then I looked up and saw the curtain dropping. I felt a real sense of unease, but I ignored it. Come on, don't be silly. I know this guy for almost 6 years. I'll finally get to meet him in person, I said to myself. I stepped towards the front door, pushed it when I came inside. It was the entrance to the duplex, leading up to a small lobby with stairs. The lobby was completely quiet, as if no one else lived here. I was about to close the door when, for some reason, I decided not to close it and just push it quietly. I went upstairs and saw number 11 on the door on the right. Before I could tap on the woody door, he opened it wildly. The inside of the apartment was kind of dark because of the lack of natural light. He stood there, wearing a black shirt and gray pants and bare feet, which was odd. He was partially bald and neatly shaved. He smiled and stuck his hand out for me to shake. "Well, hello there. You finally decided to do it, huh?" Something in his features was unsettling, as if he was up to something. It was as if I could see in his cold gray eyes something I couldn't explain that made me feel in danger. I reached out my hand to greet him. The moment his hand touched mine, a chill ran down my spine. "Yeah, finally," I responded out of politeness. My uneasiness must have shown on my face. He shook my hand, but he didn't let go of it, and his grip tightened. "I don't like it. I don't like this at all." "You can let go of my hand now," I said, with false amusement. He grinned, but he didn't let go. At that instant, I went into fight-or-flight mode. My heart started racing, and all my senses went crazy. He grabbed my hand and tried to pull me inside. I threw politeness out the window and yelled, "Let go of me! I said let go!" I was standing on the threshold. I gripped the wall with my left hand and tried to pull away from him. When I looked up, I saw the creepy expression of a predator and a smile that said, "I finally got you." I was not only trapped, but I also knew that no one would hear me outside the duplex. Even if someone could hear me, they'd have no idea where the screams were coming from. He wasn't a big guy. He was around my height and maybe a little overweight. Otherwise, he was able to easily overwhelm me. So I took my chance and let go of the wall and stepped inside. It caught him off guard, and I grabbed the doorknob with my left hand and began to slam the door repeatedly on his arm as he tried to walk me inside. He finally let go of my hand, and I heard a grunt as he fell over inside. I thank God for my decision to leave the front door open. I ran through the quiet alleyway without looking back until I reached the intersection. I looked behind me, but I saw no one, so I continued running. I couldn't find any cabs in the area, so I ran nearly 10 minutes before spotting a cab. While running after him, I yelled the taxi down and waved my hands. He must have seen me in his rearview mirror because he came to a complete stop. I dashed to the cab, shaking uncontrollably as I got inside. The driver gave me a wide look and was about to ask me a question when I blurted out, "To the train station. Please, hurry." He gave me a brief look before resuming the drive. I arrived at the station, purchased a ticket, and then boarded the first train to my hometown. I switched off my phone because I was afraid that he would call or message me. When I arrived, I went to the train station convenience store and pretended to look for something. I knew they'd have cameras there, so if he followed me, I'll be caught on camera. I spent nearly 10 minutes wandering between the aisles. Finally, I went up to the cashier and bought a bottle of water. On my way home, I took 2 cabs in opposite directions to confuse anyone that was following me. I didn't feel safe until I got home and shut the door. For a brief moment, I considered calling the police, but what would I say to them? He didn't do anything. I hadn't been harmed, and I'm an adult who understands what I was doing. I cursed my stupid lack of self-preservation. I told no one about this misadventure and vowed never to go through another dangerous situation like this again. I never heard from the guy after that, but it took several months for me to completely forget about the encounter and move on with my life. Until this morning, that is, when I was reading the newspaper and noticed a familiar face, a face I'd never forget. The photo was titled MSN Predator, the serial killer who lured his victims to his home and never let them leave. According to the article, all 24 victims were young women between the ages of 17 and 23, whom the killer met on Messenger. During the interrogation, the defendant stated that some of his victims had been chatting with him for more than 2 years, and only one girl had slipped between his fingers twice, as he put it, because she was somehow smarter than the others.
One more story for you, and then I think it's time for me to maybe go look into a nap, like I usually do. Maybe some of you are a little too old to play with dolls. I don't know, I'm not here to judge. But let's hear a classic story by Darkslayer87 about a group of soldiers that maybe find a little bit more than they were ready for. I'm sure that most of them thought they were too old to play with dolls, but that didn't stop them from getting invited to a doll party.
The Humvee's brakes squealed as the driver downshifted to take a sharp right. Then we came to a stop. "All right, gents, you know the drill," Sergeant Stafford yelled out. This was the 19th house search we'd had today, and quite frankly, we were all getting sick of it. My boots hit the sand, and I slung my rifle over, getting a good grip on it. An exhalation of exhaustion and boredom was heard from all the guys as we approached the door. "You think we'll catch this one red-handed, Ellis?" Ray grinned at me. "Oh yeah, pants around his ankles and all. God, I felt embarrassed for that guy." We stacked up for our routine formation at the door. Corporal Martinez approached the front, lowering his rifle. He took a quick charge up and punted the door wide open. "Move, move, move!" I swung around the right corner, scanning the area, and I had Ray on my rear checking the front. It was a kitchen area. Busted cupboards, disgusting-looking tiles. The whole place reeked of old carpet and mold. I felt Ray's hand on my rig, indicating for me to press on. I rushed forward in a controlled manner and felt the 6 pairs of footsteps trailing behind me. The living room was clear, and we headed for the stairs, located at the far left. I heard some rummaging upstairs, so I indicated to Sergeant Stafford in the rear to swap me out. I quickly rushed along the right side of the column, swapping with Private Ashford, who carried the team's big-ass shotgun. Ashford excitedly raised his weapon, waiting for the tap. I was now in the 4th position, carefully threading into the stack. My eyes were constantly darting left and right, looking for the open back door or window or what have you. We started moving up the stairs, hugging the wall tightly. Reaching the turn in the staircase, Ashford confidently swung the corner. Having a little visibility over Mendez's shoulder, I saw him freeze. His face turned pale in a matter of seconds. the clacking of his rifle sling indicating his violent shaking. Ashford moved to the fore, 6 shots fired in the direction of something upstairs. Contact! Private Watford swung around Ashford to provide greater suppression fire and move up the stairs to unclog the stack. An ear-piercing sound came from upstairs, the chaos ensuring the formation was disoriented, along with the noise, and I began to feel nauseous. Grabbing Martinez's collar, I tugged him down the stairs to free the staircase for engagement. As we were moving down the stairs, I caught a glimpse of what appeared to be a woman, entirely covered in bullet holes, dashing towards Ashford. Click, click, click. His gun ran dry, and it was already too late. The hellish creature, dripping blood and having a few pieces of meat barely holding its limbs together, closed the distance between him and snapped his neck with an inhuman amount of force. A magazine dumped by Watford led him to the same fate. Having it turned towards us, I caught some details of what it looked like. Its face was hollow, cheeks sunken in, eye sockets empty. Saying it was pale would be an understatement. Freakishly skinny and tall, completely destroyed by bullet holes. Its nails were probably the size of half a knife. Our whimpers and curses were muffled by the sound of the automatic fire and ejecting magazines. It was not phased. "Get down!" The familiar sound of a grenade being ejected from the grenade launcher tube echoed from behind me. I dove to the left, managing to pull Martinez down just in time, and an explosion followed. Then it was just darkness. My ears were ringing, face full of dust. Aching pain in my left leg stuck as I attempted to get up. I slowly opened my eyes, glaring at the flickering light from the ceiling. I glanced to my right, but Martinez wasn't there. That's when I spotted all the bodies. Sergeant Stafford, Corporal Smith, PFC Erutious. I whimpered in fear as I dragged my ass towards the wall, breathing heavily. I felt my rifle under my right hand and gripped it tight. Another detailed look towards the deceased, and I spotted Martinez too. Hunched over on a chair, head hung backwards, throat slashed open. Ray. I didn't see Ray anywhere. I had to find him. I pulled myself up, nearly collapsing. A quick glance down towards my knee revealed the issue. A huge piece of debris had lodged itself in there. I pulled it out, letting out a groan and a few quick breaths. Dragging that leg behind and pushing myself off the wall, I started moving upstairs. "Ray! Where are you, man?" I turned the corner of the stairs and realized why Ashford froze. The upstairs area was a large living room. In there, neatly arranged, were about 14 to 15 chairs. Sitting in them with perfect posture were corpses. The corpses of recon squads that went missing earlier today. In the farthest chair to the right, I spotted Ray. He was alive. Started making my way up the stairs, and I saw his eyes widen and his lips attempt to say something. "I'm coming, man. Just hold on." "Ellis, on the ceiling." My blood ran cold and my eyes widened. In a split second, my heart rate doubled, and I was clenching my jaw so hard I could have easily broken it. Slowly, raising my glance and rifle towards the ceiling, I saw it. Head slightly tilted to the right, hanging onto the ceiling with those ridiculously long legs. Its thinning hair hung down, drenched in blood, inches from my face. It let out a sickening gurgle or a groan before striking at me. I woke up in one of those chairs. I glanced to my left and noticed Ray wasn't there. Suddenly a blood-curdling scream echoed from the next room. I dove out the window and crawled away, giving it a quick glance backwards. It was staring at me, its hollow face replicating what would have been a smile on a human. Its arms moved up, raising something. I caught a glance of a familiar blonde head. "Ray, I'm so sorry, man."
And just like that, it's time for us to say so long yet again. I hope you've enjoyed today's visit and today's cozy horror with yours truly. Till next time, I hope you'll be safe, and I hope you'll have an amazing day and a spooky evening.